Hi there, and welcome to the Homestead Education Podcast. Do you have a homestead, farm, or just dream of a rural life? This is a show to help you and your kids grow your own food and grow as a person. I'm your host, Kody Hanner. I'm a homesteader, homeschool mom of six, and small town enthusiast. I was raised by an old school rancher and blessed by the grace of God to have been exposed to so much of what rural life has to offer. Join me every week to talk about homesteading, homeschooling, and growth with a homestead education. Hi, and welcome back. I just want to remind you that you can get all my homestead science books on my website for a new way of teaching agriculture to today's youth and aspiring homesteaders by focusing on small-scale farming and self-sufficiency. If you're a school or co-op, feel free and reach out to me directly. So, hey guys, last week we did a little bit of catch up, but this week I want to jump right into the topic because I feel like it's a really important one in the homesteading world. And so, about 3 weeks ago, I was speaking on a panel with Ruth Ann Zimmerman and a couple of other really wonderful ladies at an event. And okay, any of you who are just watching me, I stretched my foot out and something moved underneath it, and it was my daughter's puppy. I had no clue he was in here. So, sorry about that. Anyways, so we were on this panel. We talked about a lot of really fun things. Had some funny questions and, cooking questions and how we like make things work and in our kitchens. But one that really kind of hit me is how do we build a community in the homesteading world? Or, just kind of in rural living in general. And I think sometimes that question throws me off a little because I've always lived rurally. So I've always had to create relationships and build community in those ways where on the flip side for me, if I went to a big city, I wouldn't know how to build community there. I wouldn't know who to talk to, who to trust, any of that type of stuff. So it kind of I can understand where people moving from the city where they're surrounded by people all the time. And even if, like I can go from one rural town to another rural town and kind of know where I'm going to find my people. Where when you're moving from a city to a rural community, you don't know where to find your people. And I can see that being something that would be very overwhelming. Now, I've moved to some larger towns before, but I was younger, I was in college, I was going to class, so I was like meeting people all the time. And so that was a different scenario. I'm talking a lot of homesteaders are, young families, stay-at-home moms, retired couples, and it's a lot to try to build a relationship with anyone when, I mean, you're handling your farm, you're handling your family, you're, you're not going to, school pickup lines, you're not going to baseball practice. I mean, some of us are, but I'm just kind of like putting it out there that you aren't necessarily put into the same scenarios as you would be if you weren't outside of, or if you weren't inside the homestead circle. But what's really happened with that homestead circle is that it was designed heavily during COVID era. So we are completely separated from everybody, whether it's your neighbor or somebody that lives across the country. And suddenly the only way that you can have any type of human connection is via the internet. So then all these people are making friends, they're um, building online communities, they are finding like-minded people who want to do the same things that they want to do. And it doesn't matter that they aren't in their same community. And a lot of times, I mean, there's a lot of people in your community that don't want you making those types of changes. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the crab in a bucket analogy. And it's when you have a bunch of crabs in a bucket and one crab is trying to get out, like escape and be free, all the other crabs are going to pull them back in. And we have that same thing in small towns, or small communities within larger towns and stuff. We see that in low income communities and stuff a lot, where if you try to leave and find something better for yourself, if you're doing something different than what everybody else is doing, they are going to try to pull you back in. And that is the crab in the analogy bucket, or crab in a bucket analogy. And that really happened during COVID, when a lot of people saw what they didn't like anymore and they wanted to get away from it. And whether that was working in corporate or sending their kids to public school or just living in cities where there weren't the supply chains were cut off and stuff like that. And they're like, I want something different and new and better for my family. They were pulled back a lot by, friends and family. And there was a lot of people cut off. And of course, then when we got into the conversations of the, vaccine, and the whole families were just split down the middle on, whether or not it was a good thing. And that has really led, it kind of created a perfect storm of people who found their community and they found their true callings and they found the things that make them happy and their hearts sing and their kids aren't sitting on tablets and they're not worried about drive-by shootings or whatever it is that they got away from. They found their people online. And now that life is settling, I don't know that it'll ever go back to normal, but now that it is settling, people are realizing, that the reason they moved to the communities that they did and they started the lives that they started was because they didn't want to be glued to a computer. So now suddenly they're in these rural communities. They have these visions of a rural life for their children, which include, 4-H and barn dances and community pot or church potlucks and all that type of stuff. But they didn't move to these towns and start building that community right away. Some of them did. I'm not, like saying like all of you moved to town and became a hermit, you moved to these small towns and became a hermit. No, that's not the case at all. But it wasn't as necessary because we were all kind of told to stay away from each other. And you had people to talk to and to learn from online. And now, I mean, you have a homestead to run, you have children to educate, you have their activities and church and co-op and all that type of stuff. You don't have time to be sitting online building a community or watching a YouTuber or whatever it is that you were doing, you had time for it before, but now that you've put all your things in place, you don't. But maybe you just want, somebody to call when, you want to go to lunch with somebody, or one of the kids fell and hurt their wrist and you need to run them to the doctor and you don't want to drag everybody and, your husband's working out of town, or um somebody who can teach you how to uh pressure can. Like you've mastered the water bath, but you've got the pressure canning down. Or you know what, maybe you just want someone to talk to while you're doing it. Someone to go pick the apple trees with you, and you don't care that they take half the apples home with you. You just want someone to talk to tell about your day, vent your frustrations, pray for each other, whatever it is that that your soul is needing. You're just not going to find that online anymore. Not in the same way. I mean, there's still a lot of wonderful communities. There's a lot of wonderful educators. I mean, heck, I'm one of them here myself, and you're listening to me right now. I love sitting in my garden and listening to my favorite podcasters while I'm weeding my garden. That's my thing. And honestly, I don't really want anyone out there talking to me. Like my husband, my kids, my best friend. Like that's my time. And that's kind of where I think there's still definitely a space for a lot of this, but not so much that that's the only form of content that people are absorbing. They're reading more, they're um or more than they were like a year ago, I think. I mean, I don't know. I just think things have changed for sure. Like some of this I'm going to be spot on with, and some of it you're going to be like, no, Kody, you're not spot on with this. And that's okay because I'm not in everybody's community. But this is kind of what I've seen like across the board. That people, there's like half of our brain has that 3-second attention span where we're like scrolling reels, and the other half of our brain is really starting to crave the long content, which is the books and stuff like that, where a lot of people are um I don't want to say they're moving away from the YouTubers because I know that that is still, but it's not that boom that was happening anymore. It's kind of settled where it's like when TV was invented for the first time and then it kind of settled in and like everybody had a show. And so it's gonna take a little while for us to kind of get back into that groove. So I want to tell you a little bit about my community and when I first moved into it. So we moved here before COVID, and I've actually done a podcast about this before, but it's been a few years. Um, we moved here pre-COVID, about a year and a half before. I mean, had no clue any of that was coming. We had our other reasons with family health and stuff that we needed the farm. I found out I was pregnant kind of during the move. Um, we'd put in the offer and we were moving, but it like didn't happen right away. And so during the move, I found out I was pregnant and ended up having a lot of issues with the pregnancy. I mean, pulmonary embolisms, and he came early and all this stuff. And I went into labor with him 8 weeks early, water broke. So I had to go to, forget what it's called, the um, like antepartum department at a large hospital about 3 hours away from my kids. And so our five older kids were still running the farm. Luckily, we had, a milk cow already, and we'd butchered a couple of hogs, and we had just harvested a bunch. So my kids had stuff in the house, like food wise. And we've always kind of bought things in bulk. Um, so she came to rescue her puppy. Um, we'd always bought things in bulk, and so they were okay. But I mean, my youngest was that besides the one I was pregnant with was 2. And it was really hard being away from our family during that time. And it was right when COVID shutdowns happened. So everyone's being told not to go around each other. But yet here I am in the hospital, 3 hours away from home. My kids are all there. My husband's trying to be back and forth, but he just can't be in both places at once. And my community stepped up. Like it was amazing. They set up a meal train. My kids had a hot meal every night. There was a mom in the house checking on my kids, calling me, letting me know how everybody was. We live very close to Border Patrol in Idaho, like up north, the Canadian Border Patrol. And the guys on our side, women, their wives and stuff were meeting up with them and making sure my kids had like bread and peanut butter and just the things that they kind of needed for about 6 to 8 weeks. It was really amazing. And then they made sure that we had food, frozen casseroles and things like that for about a month after we came home from the hospital. We came home from the hospital on the day COVID lockdowns happened. So people were still showing up and bringing us lasagnas. Totally different community up here. Um, 100% felt like this is home. I would never live anywhere else. These people are wonderful. Um, I still feel that way about this community. Uh, Now that we've been here for several years, there's definitely, there's dramas, there's, clubs we've joined and, people just didn't get along or, this kid, that kid, my teenagers dated someone and they broke up. And, we have those small town family dynamics happening that, we moved away from, but we're starting our own traditions here of, not liking our neighbors. So, but that doesn't mean that I still don't love this community and that I'm constantly making new friends. And I have friends that I've had since the day we moved here. And, it's just life. But at the same time, we're busy and I forget to make time for the friends that we have. And I forget to do the things to expand our circle. And with our kids homeschooling, they're always wanting to like make new friends and find someone to go do something with. And I forget to go to church, like not forget, but we travel a lot for the business and we're tired or we just straight up aren't here on Sundays. But that can be really hard on people. Like they found researchers. I've read it. I didn't bring a whole lot of stats with me here today. I did bring some. I was writing them down before I came. But, in general, and I mean, this is going really extreme. But in general, in rural areas, the suicide rate climbs faster than metropolitan areas. And this comes from occupational stress, isolation, stigma around mental health, economic volatility, um, environmental pressures, limited access to mental health services. I mean, it's true. And farmers and ranchers and like agricultural managers, things like that, they experience suicide rates at 3.5 times the general population. So, yes, that's really extreme. And I'm not coming on here like, this, you probably get started listening to the podcast and you're like, oh, she's going to give me all these really great ways to like make new friends. And it's going to be such a neat, upbeat podcast. And here she is talking about suicide rates. So let's kind of like glaze over that. But I don't want to not talk about it because we hear about it a lot in with farmers, the economic issues that happen with farms, the fact that we don't have a lot of mental health services in rural areas. And of course, there's a lot more options for telehealth and, apps where you can have a counselor, but then finding your insurance to cover that. I mean, it's a lot. Um, and I haven't heard a lot of homesteaders kind of going into that um into the population of those that have higher suicide rates. And I'm so thankful for that because I feel like once we being in that homestead space, it's because you're really embracing your family and you're embracing the things that your land can provide for you. But that does also include opting out of systems. And like I said, there's more, even access to mental health in larger cities. And that's often a system that we're choosing to opt out of when we come into rural areas. So, if you're feeling really down, um, whether it's postpartum or just being away from people, or, if I know I do have a lot of guys who listen to this, if you're feeling like you're not providing for your family well enough as you're trying to create a business on your homestead and that's getting to you, get help. It's okay. Um, and whether that's getting um like mental health services or even just like, admitting, how many times have you said if you need anything, let me know? Like I actually kind of did a whole podcast on that statement. You run into somebody at the grocery store, your rule, you only see them at the grocery store and you're like, oh man, it's so good to see you. How's the wife? Blah, blah, blah. Let me know if you need anything. But the thing is, we mean it. If somebody called me and said, Kody, I cannot get a cord of firewood in for my family for the winter, we're, disabled or we don't have the money or whatever it is, my family is the first one there doing what we can. And whether that's helping them find the right outreach center, like if they're a veteran calling the VFW or something like that, because there is wood that is specifically donated to the VFW for rural people. I mean, at least in most of the communities I've lived in. Um, or if it's us physically going and doing it ourselves, like, they have the wood, but it's not cut up. So my kids and I and my husband, we go out there and we do it. Are you looking for new ways to advertise your business? I would like to invite you to advertise your business on the Homestead Education Podcast. Did you know that 60% of listeners will make a purchase after hearing an ad on a podcast? Why is this? Because personal connections and credibility from someone they truly trust will give you the best conversions. My podcast has been on the air for over 3 years now, and with an average of 5,000 downloads per episode and tons of long-term listeners, you're bound to have somebody who will find that credibility in me. All ad spots will be promoted on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and my weekly newsletter. I have podcast sponsorship spots available that are affordable for all business sizes. And all advertising revenue will be used towards my educational outreach in the form of travel costs, curriculum development, supplies, and the administration of such activities. Go to my show notes now or visit thehomesteadeducation.com/podcast dash sponsorship. I hope to hear from you soon. Or if we're out of town, we might call someone else we know that would be more than happy to do it. And there's even been times where I've just loaned the money to or given. I always, if I'm giving it to give. If that comes back to me or if it comes back to me in a different way. I mean, unless somebody's coming to me and asking me for a large quantity, but a couple $100 for a cord of firewood, I'm happy to pay it. If you can pay me back, great. If you can't, great. If you want to trade me for food or supplies or something like that, that's great too. So it all comes around. But what I'm saying is every community has hundreds of people just like me. So if you need that cord of firewood, like all your bills are paid and you just can't come up with the money for that, or even if you can't come up with the money for a tank of gas to drive out to the woods to get some cutting done, reach out to your church, reach out to somebody. Like don't let that get down to you. Like get down on you. So now that we're past all the let's make sure you're not like in crisis. Um, and if you are in crisis and you don't know who to reach out to, I don't know everybody in your community, obviously, but if you don't know what services there might be, reach out to me. I'll see if I can find something. Um, but, or, I mean, yeah, please just reach out to me if you need to. I can help you find someone in your community. Now, moving on. If this conversation that you're looking for is more like, I just wanted someone to go grocery shopping with, because like I'll admit, my best friend and I growing up, we went grocery shopping together, even as like moms, because it was just like nice. We would either, take the kids if we had to, or have a sitter, and we would go grocery shopping. We'd get a coffee. It was a good time. Um, I definitely have nobody I grocery shop with here except for my husband. And let's face it, that's like going hunting with the warden. It's no fun. Or I go with my children who are hanging off the side of the cart and want to push it and fight over everything and convince me that I should buy them gushers. So these are the ways that you can make some friends. Right off the bat, go to church. You know, if you're not religious, find something else along those lines, like a club or something like that. But I guess we're going to get to that. But there's community centers and there's, organizations like, senior center for people that are retired, or if you're not retired, like volunteer at the senior center or something like that. I mean, it's just a really great way to meet people. Um, but a church is always a great way because they have activities for all ages. There's a set time that they're going to meet. You don't have to like, pay dues to join. You just show up and they're usually genuinely happy to see you. And if you're new in town, or even if you aren't new in town, but it's your first time coming, like they're going to be happy to introduce you to people and get you connected. So that's always a good first line. Like, I want to meet somebody. Um, Next is if your kids do activities, or you have, school age kids, get them involved in activities. I know a lot of us are homeschooling, so we aren't are always sure what to do. Co-ops, a lot of states, the kids can still play school sports, even if they're homeschooling. There's 4-H, American Heritage Girls, Trail Life, Boy Scouts if you're still on board with them. There's just so many things that people can do to get involved. And it's sometimes hard. Like you just need to like, I don't know, like pull the band-aid off, like just get in and do it. Um, on the flip side, if you're like, I really just want community for like my food system. That's great. Start a bartering system with somebody. Like put a sign out that you have eggs for sale. I've met so many people that are just coming to buy things from us and then we've made friends. Or, that I could reach out to or use as a contact for various things that I'm working on. Um, Find a for sale or barter page. Find a page that allows animal sales. or whatever it is that you're trying to sell or buy or barter or whatever. It is such a great way to build community with that. Um, Go down to the farmer's market and talk to all the vendors. Like buy from them too, but don't just buy and walk away. Like get to know them. They might have something that they're looking for as well because guess what? They're a farmer, homesteader, whatever, just like you. Um, Another thing, there's granges, there's community halls. If you want to start something, do it yourself. We live in a community where we are very, very far away from a lot of stuff, and we have a community hall, and we have meetings and weddings and that type of stuff there. And but we're so far out, it's really hard to have yard sales up here because nobody's just driving past our houses. So a bunch of us women have gotten together and decided to do a rummage sale at our local community hall. Another wonderful way to meet people. You can get it. I mean, if you don't want to do a rummage sale, you could just do a potluck just because. If your church doesn't do activities like that where there's um, ways to fellowship after church, consider starting a potluck or a club, or not a club, but like, something you do with your church outside of church. Um, invite someone over. Like it's okay. Like invite another family for dinner. I guarantee you if you reach out to another mom and say, "Hey, I'm doing a bunch of canning today. I thought you might like to come over and help and take some home with you and let the kids play." I almost guarantee they'd want to come. I mean, unless they have something else going on, but or if you plan it in advance, I know very few people who would decline that offer because it's community, it's learning, it's bringing home some food, I mean, it's the kids getting to play. It's all things that they want to do. Um, we've talked about, like my friends and I have talked about doing a day where we all bring various ingredients and make like a whole bunch of lasagnas or tamales or something, and then divvy them up within the group. But in the meantime, we're all chatting and having a good time, and the kids are playing, and we get to bring home a whole bunch of food. Like, why wouldn't we want to do this? And that's really the thing. It's even 50 to 100 years ago. I'm not talking like ancient times. I'm talking um even just our grandmothers. They had to have community because they didn't have social media. If they needed to know how to do something, or if they had an emergency, or they just wanted to gossip about the house three houses down, they had to do that via sitting together at the kitchen table. And there's a bunch of jokes about it and a stigma about it. Like, the guys sitting out front, talking about the weather, and the women talking about the guys, but there was community there. And even though that part of it is just gossiping, those are also the people that they would be calling for all the things that they need help with, all the community stuff that is going to come together, or if they know somebody else who needs help. That building of community is highly important. And sometimes, yeah, it feels really hard to just walk into a new place for the first time and not know anyone. But everybody else did it one time too. So you just, you're not going to be judged for it. Is kind of what I'm saying. Like, and I'm the first one to be like, oh, I'm a little shy. I don't want to go. You just kind of have to. And once you get there, I guarantee that it's not going to hurt as bad as you think it does right now. Um, you know, write it into your schedule. If you're homeschooling, like you don't do school on Fridays and you go to the park or you go do activities or you invite other families over for play dates. Make that part of your homeschool week. There's nothing wrong with not doing school one day a week, and that's the day that you go on hikes and go on field trips and invite people over and stuff, because that's all still credit-worthy stuff, and it is necessary for everybody's mental health to be doing these other things besides just, being trapped in the house all the time together. I know how hard it can also be when we live far away from a lot of people. I mean, us personally, we're at the end of the road. We live 40 something miles from town, right at the Canadian border. People are not driving past our house. However, I'm driving past all of theirs. So you just have to build the relationships, make it work. My ideal community would definitely include more women in my life. I struggle sometimes, like I'll make a friend with somebody, with like the wife of somebody my husband's on the fire department with, and then something happens and the husband quits the fire department. Like, do I still have my friend? Like, yeah, sure, but we're not in each other's space all the time like we were when our husbands were on the fire department together. So there's definitely things like that that I'm constantly facing. And when we're busy like we are, if we're not seeing each other all the time, then it's not an easy opportunity. So find friends that aren't reliant on someone else if you can. Now, I know as spouses, as parents, a lot of times our friendships are reliant on the things our spouses or kids are doing because that's the only thing we have time for. But make the effort to start a gardening group, or there's the um what is it called? The Ladies Homestead Gathering. It's a group of women. You can start a chapter in your county or your area where women get together and teach each other skills. I mean, there's one in the county next to mine. They want to start one in my county, but there's just really nobody who is like set and ready to start it. Yes, Miranda, I know you want me to start one, but I'm not. Just in case she was listening. I just don't have the capacity to start the club myself, but if somebody else was starting a chapter, I would absolutely like be their right-hand woman. Um, so that's something to look into, and I will make sure I actually link that in the show notes. I didn't write it down originally, but I will, because they're a really great community. Ladies Gathering, that's what they're called. Ladies Homestead Gathering. Um, find events that are happening. I mean, I just went to a local prepper event this last weekend. It was great. Like, met so many like-minded people, was able to sell some of my products, set up some of my farm sales for the winter. Is just about sometimes you just have to make time for it, even if it doesn't always feel like you have the time. But I guarantee that your full cup will be able to pour out more to your family, to your homestead, to your businesses, whatever it is that is making it where you're feeling that isolation. They're all going to thrive if you take the time to fill your cup with community. Until next time, keep growing. Thank you for joining me today at the Homestead Education, and I hope that I have given you something to think about this week. To help others find me, please comment and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. You can also follow me on Facebook at the Homestead Education and Instagram at homestead_education. Do you have questions that you would like answered or just want to say hi? Please email me at hello@thehomesteadeducation.com. Until next time, keep growing!